Hey everybody, it's Monday. How are you? How was your weekend? Mine was all right, not too shabby. Before I get started in what I want to talk about today, I did do an interview last week with Sierra Clark with the Michigamming Journalism Project. Sorry, lost my train of thought there. I wanted to do a video that didn't work out, so I did just audio and uploaded it to my podcast. I have included the link for that in the description. Please give it a listen. We talk about a lot of different things that I think are important always, but especially at this point in time. And it's a really great interview. She's an amazing person, and just give it a listen. I hope you will, and I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll get a lot out of it. By the way, my name is Stephanie. If you are new to my channel, welcome. What I'm going to be doing today is not a makeup tutorial. I feel like I need to say that every time because people see somebody putting on makeup, they assume it's a tutorial, and it's not. I'm just putting on my makeup for something to do while I talk to you about whatever is on my mind. And today what is on my mind is the election. No big surprise there. More specifically, though, I am thinking about some of the things that have been said since Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have been announced as the winners of the election. They won, yeah! Whether certain people like to accept the reality or not, we do in fact have a president and vice president-elect. And that is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Now, recently, I've had to take a break from social media for the most part, just popping in here and there to like something or leave a little short comment. And the reason for that is, well, there are lots of reasons, but one of the reasons is I just cannot take any more of the, I guess, the collective amnesia some of us are being asked to have about the last 4 years. There is a lot of talk right now about unity, and I understand the sentiment behind it. This country has been through a lot the last 4 years, and there is a desire to move forward and heal. And to do that, we are going to have to find a way forward together. I think, though, that the calls for unity are falling on deaf ears for a lot of very good reasons. We are being asked to forget that half the country saw a man run for office who was in no way fit for office and decided, yes, that is the person I want to represent me for the next 4 years. And during that 4 years, we saw this man do things that measurably harmed people. And again, the people who supported him said, you know what, I'm fine with that. He's doing what I hired him to do. He's, quote, draining the swamp. It didn't matter that most of what Donald Trump did or allowed his administration to do targeted people that had nothing to do with, quote, the swamp, and were in fact marginalized American citizens, or they were people who were coming to the United States from other countries because their own countries were no longer safe. And I might add, were no longer safe due in part to things the United States had done in the name of, quote, foreign relations. So let's take a trip down memory lane, shall we? I remember first I remember the horror of the night that Donald Trump was elected. And if you haven't figured out by now, if you're here looking for political neutrality, this ain't the place. This is not the channel for you. I do not shy away from letting my thoughts be known. I am not looking to impress everyone. I am not looking to impress anyone. I also don't feel the need to be inclusive to people who hold hostile and hateful perspectives. If you're looking for that, move along, because this channel is not for you. Anyway, as I was saying, so I remember the night he was elected. And I remember going to bed that night once it became clear that there was no hope for Hillary to pull off a win. I went to bed and didn't sleep because I was terrified. Because I knew, because of what I knew of the people who elected him, I knew that we were in for trouble. I knew that the next 4 years were going to unleash terrible things, the likes of which we had not seen in the United States before, or at least in recent history. And I also acknowledge I'm saying that from a very privileged perspective. As a white person living in northern Michigan, my perspective on what horrors people have to endure every day in this country is definitely going to be skewed. I freely acknowledge that. So, but from the perspective I held in 2016, I was terrified because I thought we're going to see things we haven't seen before. I would learn in the years to come that no, we have actually seen a lot of this before, and for some people this is just how it's always been, but I wasn't there yet. So in the years to come, we saw this man who was elected by roughly half the country, give or take. And I forgot to do this first. Oh well, I'll make it work. The first memory I have of just a taste of how bad things were about to get. So I went to the Women's March the day after Donald Trump's inauguration. And the response on social media to the march was essentially that women were marching, talking about how oppressed they were, when the women in the United States aren't oppressed at all, they have more rights than many women in the world, etc., so on and so forth. Because people didn't understand. These marches that were happening in 2017, the day after Donald Trump's inauguration, they were not about asking for rights we didn't have. They were about protecting the rights we did have. Because it was evident to anybody who had been paying attention that the people who elected Donald Trump had no interest in protecting, say, reproductive rights, or working toward a more just and equitable society. Had no interest in protecting the marginalized people coming to our shores looking for a better life here in the United States. They had no interest in protecting that. So the march was not about saying, I don't have these rights and I want them. It was saying we do have these things and we desperately want to protect them because the person that y'all just put in office is a threat to all of these things. And I remember people that I knew via social media, and some of them that I knew personally, some local people, were making fun of the march, making fun of the people who marched. One of my no longer friends said that the people who marched that day were, quote, pigs, and, you know, there was just no respect shown for the alarms being sounded that something very bad was unfolding. In the days to come, we would learn that he didn't waste any time at all making immigrants coming in through our southern border feel unsafe. Do you remember all the panic over the, quote, caravans of migrants all over Fox News? Everybody was so worried there's a caravan of migrants coming. And I remember hearing about the kids in cages and the family separations, and the excuse used was, well, Barack Obama did it. Well, yeah, he did. And we can't skirt around that. Immigration in the United States has never been, or at least not recently, it's not been something that is always feasible or always necessarily safe for some people. And yes, Barack Obama did use the, quote, cages. He did separate families, but he did it, family separations were very short-lived in the Obama administration, and they most certainly didn't lose track of thousands of children, and they didn't threaten children with deportation without their parents. Family separation prior to this administration was considered a stopgap measure, just to make sure that people coming into this country were coming in a way that was safe, that the children who arrived at the border didn't arrive via a means that was meant to harm them or to dehumanize them by using them as, you know, by engaging in activities that were illegal, that were involving children. So that's what the whole family separation thing was during the Obama administration and previous administrations. With the Trump administration, family separation was being used as a means to deter further immigration from other people from the same country. The hope was that people would see these horrible things that were happening to these families and would think, I don't want that to happen to mine, so we're not going to go to the United States and look for help. We're not going to seek asylum. I went to the March for Families. After the March for Families, I was having we'll call it a conversation with someone. And it was a very passionate conversation. It got loud. And the person said to me, I have no problem with immigrants coming to the United States as long as they're doing it legally. And I said, well, seeking asylum is legal. This is the legal way to do this. And their response to me was, hopefully not for long. Under the Trump administration, the rights of LGBTQ+ people have been under threat. Donald Trump made it illegal for transgender people to serve in the military. This did not only apply to new recruits. This was anybody who was in the military who is transgender was suddenly out of a job and had to pack up and go. I have a friend who is trans who served, and they said that it was very strange on Veterans Day to hear people saying to them, thank you for your service, when those same people voted for and remained supportive of Donald Trump and supported the trans military ban and would other this person under any other circumstance, but on Veterans Day felt it was still their place to say something as utterly meaningless as thank you for your service in one breath while praising Donald Trump in another breath, when this man had done so much to harm transgender people. This man also made it possible for medical practitioners to deny health care to transgender people and other LGBTQ+ people. He made it possible for a medical practitioner to use their personal, their religious convictions as a reason to deny providing services to someone because of their gender or sexual orientation. This is a man who will say in one breath that he's not racist, and yet in another breath cannot form the words with his mouth to denounce white supremacy in the middle of a presidential debate. He was asked point blank, will you renounce white supremacy? He could not do it. Instead, he chose to send up a dog whistle, which with all of the subtlety of a bullhorn, to the Proud Boys to stand by, or what was it, stand by and stand down? I don't remember the exact wording, but basically telling them to be prepared to take action as soon as he gave the signal. That was what the President of the United States did when asked to denounce white supremacy. In all of this, his supporters have stood by him. When the Black Lives Matter protests were happening during the summer of 2020, there was no empathy shown for the people marching and for the causes they were marching for. In fact, many Trump supporters said that people were complaining about things that weren't happening. that racial inequality is a thing of the past in the United States. That if people would just comply when they're pulled over by the police, these things wouldn't happen. And by these things, we mean unarmed black men and women being murdered by cops. If they would just comply. So first we saw the video of Ahmaud Arbery being hunted and then killed in Georgia, brought in broad daylight on video. Then we saw George Floyd being murdered by a cop who wore a smirk on his face the entire time. And even when bystanders were telling him, he's bleeding, he can't breathe, get off of him, the cop continued smirking, eventually killing George Floyd in broad daylight on video. That is how brazen these people are. They're not afraid of somebody recording them because they know they're very likely to get away with what's happening. Now, Ahmaud Arbery was not killed by an active duty police officer, but it is my understanding that people involved in his killing were at one time cops. Then we had Breonna Taylor, whose murderers were not only not charged, but the grand jury was told not to even consider a charge. And yet there are still people in this country, mostly Trump supporters, who are going to say, we don't have a problem with systemic racism in this country. And they will reach for whatever excuse they can find to justify these murders. And what does oh God, I almost said it. And what does Donald Trump do? He just simply doesn't talk about it. Or when he does talk about it, it's a nod to the Proud Boys. This is the same president who has spent the last 4 years calling anyone who doesn't agree with him the enemy. Whether that is the media for actually simply reporting the things he says, which make him look bad because he says a lot of really stupid things, or Democrats. He thinks Democrats are not real Americans. He has said flat out that Democrats are the enemy, that we're un-American. Or really anybody who doesn't agree with him. It could be a Republican who has spoken out against him. Suddenly they're the enemy. And what do his supporters do? They just repeat what he says. That Democrats, the media, Republicans who don't support Donald Trump, etc., are not American. And they refer to themselves as the true patriots. Yet these patriots are perfectly willing to look the other way when the President of the United States is using his businesses to enrich himself, violating the Emoluments Clause, violating the Hatch Act during his presidency. He said he was going to divest himself of these things, and he never did. And his staff, people acting on his behalf, have also violated the Hatch Act numerous times. And the patriots, who consider themselves like the last bastion of integrity against the complete annihilation of the U.S. Constitution and so forth, what do when these things are brought to light? They say it's fake news. They say it's just because the media hates Donald Trump, and they are insistent that Donald Trump and his children, who have been so crooked in the way they conduct business, they can't even touch a charity because they are so devoid of integrity that they have actually stolen from charities. These are the people that Trump supporters think are the only ones telling them the truth. And they are convinced that there is a deep state effort out there to discredit Donald Trump. As if Donald Trump is that important. These are the people who, with this election, are refusing steadfastly to accept the results of the election. We're not talking about, they'll say, well, it's the same as Russia, Russia, Russia. Well, no, it actually isn't. Because at least with the allegations of Russian interference in our elections, there was actual evidence. There is actual proof of it. It doesn't matter that the President of the United States went out of his way to make sure none of that proof ever saw the light of day as much as possible. The fact is, what we do know tells us that Russia interfered with our elections, the president allowed it, the president encouraged it, and his supporters are more than okay with it because they got the result they wanted. In this case, though, there is no evidence of the fraud that they keep talking about. Yet, they will keep clinging to it. They will call the courts liars. They will insist that anyone who says there was no fraud is only saying that because they are working with the fraudsters. And this becomes somewhat personal for me because a lot of what people are using to validate their claims of fraud is something that happened right here in my county. And it involved people I know. And it was a simple human error that was caught quickly and corrected. And a very temporary win for Joe Biden here ended up being the expected win for Donald Trump. Yet, people are going to use that story. They are going to besmirch the integrity of our county clerk and our entire clerk's office here and suggest that the people who tried to do this are nothing but liars and frauds themselves. And it doesn't matter what our county clerk says. There are people who are just simply not going to listen to her because because they believe that she is in on this effort to win the election for Joe Biden by way of fraud, even though she is herself a Republican. So insistent are these people that the election is fraudulent, rather than accepting the results of the election as they have told us for the last 4 years at every opportunity that we need to be doing. They staged a march in Washington, D.C., the Million MAGA March. It drew approximately, last I heard, about 10,000 people, give or take. So it was far short of 1 million. But the point is, they've spent the last several years telling people things like, he's still your president, deal with it. And then as soon as they lose an election, it's all, well, it's just fraud. And Joe Biden didn't actually win, and we're not going to acknowledge him as president-elect, and so on and so forth. So these are the people who are now saying, or we're now being told, that we need to unify with these people somehow. And while we're here, let's talk for a minute about the people who decided that they wanted to try to destroy the Democratic Party from the inside out. I am not giving them a pass. These are people who have built a career, who have built a reputation on in the short span of their very young careers. They have decided that they want to be known as people who are hell-bent on destroying the Democratic Party. And one of them decided to run his entire campaign on trashing the very party he was asking for votes, and then was shocked. The people had the audacity not to vote for him. I'm looking at you, Bernie Sanders. You can't run an entire campaign on trashing the Democratic Party and then wonder why Democrats don't want to vote for you. I mean, that's pretty common sense. Yet, when that happened, a lot of people were convinced that the only reason he lost was because of, quote, the establishment. These people who were so progressive suddenly wanted to throw away, to dismiss the voice of the black voters who secured the nomination for Joe Biden. All of a sudden, these people they say that they are advocates for, their voices don't matter. Here's the reality of the situation. The people who were supporting Bernie Sanders apparently were under the impression that elections are won and lost at rallies and on Twitter. And they didn't show up. I don't know if they needed a civics lesson on how elections actually work, and that that rallies are not where people cast their votes. I mean, I don't know if they didn't understand that or what, but the reality of it is when it came down to it, his people didn't show up to vote. So there was a short moratorium called on bashing the Democratic Party. And then after the election, Always on Camera decided that the truce was over and she was going to go in guns blazing and try to destroy the Democratic Party yet one more time. And then has the audacity to wonder why people don't want to work with her. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me with this? People don't want to work with you because you're not trustworthy. People don't want to work with you because you've made it abundantly clear that your primary interest is in destroying the very party that helped you get where you are. People don't want to work with you because you look at the accomplishments made by the people who were there before you and you throw them away as if they mean nothing. You would not even be where you are, Ms. AOC, if it weren't for people of color who were there before you and blazed the trail. And yet, you want to look at what they did and say it wasn't progressive enough. Look at what they did and say it's not to your liking because it's not an all or nothing approach. And the willingness with which these people will dismiss older voters is quite frankly sickening to me. You know, everything that they're allowed to do, the privilege that they have to run their mouths the way they do, and I don't say that in the way that, in a way of remember your place. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the fact that they can be there saying the things that they're saying is only because of the people who were there before them. And the willingness to show such a blatant level of disrespect for the work that was done to get them to that place, because in their minds the people who did the work weren't being aggressive enough, it really just blows my mind. And I don't see anything progressive in dismissing the work of people who came before you. People died to give people the right to vote. People died to give women the right to vote. People have sacrificed greatly so that marginalized communities are not disenfranchised. And yet, these younger people want to come in and say, well, I'm here now, and so I'm going to undo everything. I'm going to dismiss everything that happened before I got here as if it's nothing, and we're going to do things my way now. Let me tell you something. If someone came into my house and told me, well, I'm here now, so we're going to do things my way, I would not feel like they were coming to me with a desire for unity. I would not feel like they're coming to me with a desire to work with me on things I could possibly do better. I would feel like they're coming to me with hostility, and they're coming to me with a desire to hold me hostage until I submit to their will. That's how it would feel. And I gotta be honest, sometimes that's how it feels when I talk to these, you know, self-proclaimed progressives who think that they know what's best for the Democratic Party, and they're going to pitch a fit and withhold votes and so forth until they get it. If you can live through this nightmare that has been the last 4 years and still have the audacity to say someone needs to earn your vote, you're not progressive. You're somebody throwing a temper tantrum because your candidate didn't get the nomination. And now that the election has happened, I see a lot of these same people are back at it, acting as if the world owes them something because they have ideas that are different from everyone else, and they demand, they don't just demand a seat at the table, they want the whole table, and that's the problem. And so, yeah, you know, looking at all of this and being told that it's time for unity, it's time to heal. Well, let me just say this. If you're in a relationship with someone who, say, makes a habit of being abusive towards you, or just being unkind, not necessarily abusive, but just generally unkind, pretty soon, it doesn't take a long time before it starts to feel as if, you know what, apologies aren't enough. You need to make amends. And in this case, we're not even getting apologies. We're not even hearing from people, you know what, I see how my attitude, my actions contributed to harming a lot of people. We're not even getting that. What we're getting from Trump supporters is, I wanted more of the same, and you didn't give me that. So now I'm going to do everything I can to impede Joe Biden's ascent to the presidency at this point. And I'm going to just pitch a fit until his inauguration day. And even after that, I'm just not going to accept him as president. And by the way, if that results in civil war, I'm perfectly okay with that. I have seen people say this. And from the leftists, we're not even getting so much as an apology, let alone any effort to make amends. Where I live, which is northern Michigan, very rural, as Midwest as it comes, our Democratic senator barely won. He squeaked out a victory, just barely. And it was looking very uncertain for a long time that this was going to happen. And then he finally pulled it off. But throughout his entire campaign, AOC and Bernie Sanders were used as bludgeoning tools against him. They were a liability. They were not an asset. They were a liability. And what I think people don't understand, still, even though people have tried to tell them, what works in, say, a more rural area, or I mean a more urban area with more, I don't know, cosmopolitan perspectives, where featuring AOC in a commercial or something is not going to be considered a liability, does not play the same as it does in northern Michigan, where featuring her in a commercial is going to be used again and again as a scare tactic. So this is where I am with all this talk about unity. I realize that at some point we have to go forward. I get that. I am completely unclear as to how we do that, because so much trust has been broken the last 4 years. People that I thought I knew showed me an utterly new and unexpected side of themselves these last 4 years. And very little of it has been something that has made me want to say, you know what, I really do want to stay close to these people and keep them in my life. No, quite the opposite. A lot of what I've seen in people the last 4 years has made me think, you know what, I thought I knew these people, but I don't. And I don't know how to move forward now that the mask has been removed. And, you know, we have a new president coming in. Knowing what I know now, how do I move forward with these people in my life? Some of these people are people who are very proud to say, in the middle of a pandemic, I'm not going to comply with the guidelines because I think the whole thing is a hoax. I have had people say to me personally, why should I have to alter how I live my life just because you might get sick and die? Basically telling me, I realize you're compromised. I don't care. I don't want to be inconvenienced just so you can live. Or maybe the immune compromised should just stay home, as if that's an option we all have. Unfortunately, I don't have somebody to do my personal shopping for me and run my errands for me. I have to go out and do those things. So, no, I can't just stay home and hide away till 2022 when this thing is likely going to be under control. That's not possible. There are some immune compromised people who have to work. And to say to them, I don't care about your health and safety, I just don't want to be inconvenienced. How do we look at that and say, yeah, I'm going to find a way to move forward with these people because they seem really reasonable and they seem like people I should definitely learn how to get along with. I mean, I don't know how we do that. I honestly don't know. So yeah, do we have to move forward? Absolutely we do. How do we do that? I have not a clue, because the things that I have seen in people in the last 4 years and the things that I have seen in people through this election cycle, the unmitigated selfishness, the unmitigated gall to say that my ideals matter more than your safety and the safety of others. I mean, the whole earn your vote thing, boy, that still gets to me. And even though the election is done and over, just the audacity with which people would say that somebody has to earn their vote because ending this nightmare was not motivation enough to vote for somebody who could actually win. I honestly have a hard time wrapping my mind around it. So how do we move forward in unity? I have no idea. It just seems to me that we're being asked to just forget. We're being asked to forget that there are people out there who would happily watch half the country die because they don't agree with Donald Trump. So they are not American and they're the enemy, and if they died off, that would be okay. That's what... Now people will say, well, that's not most Trump supporters. No, but it's enough that it's a problem. And how do we move forward knowing that there are people who honestly believe that they are the more morally righteous because they believe someone has to earn their vote if they want them to have, offer a helping hand in ending a legitimate crisis. I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what to do with knowing that about people. And that is where I'm at with this whole question of unity. I really don't know how we achieve it, because there are people who have used the last 4 years to make it very clear that unity is not something they're interested in. Most of my family is Republican. I am the only one in my immediate family who did not vote for Donald Trump, as far as I know. I could be wrong about that. But as far as I know, I am the only one in my immediate family who didn't vote for Donald Trump. So it's not as if I don't have to do my part every single day to have unity with people. But trust is a whole other thing. And even though we have no choice but to coexist with these people, and by these people I mean Trump supporters, I mean leftists who can't set themselves aside and do what's right for everybody, I mean people who talk about how unified they want to be as a country and then continue supporting terrible policies. As a disabled person and a chronically ill person, I have gotten a very clear picture in the last few years of who would be okay with me just dying off so that they don't have to be inconvenienced. I have gotten a very clear picture in the last 4 years of who is actually pro-life and who is only pro-birth. And I would have to say that probably 95% of the, quote, pro-life people I've talked to in the last few years are simply and exclusively pro-birth. There is nothing about pro-life in the way they see the world. So what do we do with that? I honestly don't know. I wish I did, because we have a long road ahead of us to heal. But I think part of healing requires honesty. And I'm going to be completely honest and say I have a hard time seeing how I can have unity with these people, because it feels as if I'm being asked, that a lot of us are being asked, to just have a selective memory, to have collective amnesia, and move forward as though people never showed us who they really were. When in fact, people showed us who they really are with such abandon, with so much pride in being terrible. I honestly don't know what to do with that. If you do, I'd love to know. All right, I'm going to finish this up. I will be right back with some final thoughts. Okay, here I am. I'm back. So a few final thoughts. As I said, I really don't know how to move forward in unity with people who have made it clear that they really see certain lives as less valuable than other lives, despite being, quote, pro-life. They're only pro some lives, apparently. I don't know how to move forward in unity with people who will say the lived experiences of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color doesn't matter, because their narrative is more important. The narrative offered by their favorite white people is more important. I don't know how to move forward with people who cannot form their mouths to denounce white supremacy, but will say again and again and again that racism is no longer a problem in the United States in 2020, even though the division we're seeing right now, it didn't start with Donald Trump. I remember very clearly during the Obama administration, the nation was quite divided into people who were okay with having a black president and understood that, you know, his race had nothing to do with his qualifications to be president, and people who absolutely were not okay with having a black president and decided to use his race as a means to try to disqualify him with things like the birther claims. So this division we're seeing is not new, but I think the vitriol is new. I think that the pass it has been given to just be so blatantly hateful and very clear about who they believe deserves to live and who they would be okay with dying because they have a different political view. It has been given a platform to be very blatant. I think the blatantness of it is new for this era that we're in. That's not to say that there's no precedent for it in American history, because, oh boy, yes there is. But I think that for a long time, these sentiments were forced into the shadows because it was no longer fashionable to be blatantly racist and misogynistic and homophobic and transphobic and xenophobic and so forth. And then with Donald Trump, the people who hold these hateful views decided, hey, you know what, he's my guy, I can say these things openly now, and if anybody pushes back against it, I can just point to the president and say, well, he agrees with me. And I think that is the difference here. I also think that, unfortunately, some people who claim to stand for something better also, in a way, used Trumpism as a way to call for all or nothing politics and to turn centrism and compromise into a bad thing. And that is not true. The only way to get things done is with some compromise. If the opposite were true, if all or nothing politics worked, we would have had a far leftist president by now. And we haven't. We haven't because that's not what people want. It's not what works. But people who believe that way and believe that's the only right way to do things going forward used the Trump presidency to give themselves a platform to say, this is, you know, this Trump era is the result of people compromising in politics. And if people had been willing to go all or nothing, we wouldn't be here. Which makes no sense to me because, again, if people wanted that, we would have had that by now on the left. And we don't. Right-wing people are different. They do like all or nothing politics, clearly, hence Donald Trump. But people who want to be on the right side of history tend to not do that. So, good luck with your far left, all or nothing, burn it all to the ground politics. Let's see how far that gets us, because what I'm looking at right now is we have a nation that, we have one side that is thirsting for a civil war, and we have another side that has a contingent of people who will use the Democratic Party to advance their own agenda, to advance their own political career. But when everything is said and done, they too want a form of civil war, but they believe that their cause is more righteous than that of Donald Trump's sycophants. So it's kind of two sides of the same coin as far as I can tell. And this is one of those videos, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. There probably is no middle ground, and I'm okay with that because I think, again, I think that if we're going to move forward and heal as a nation, we have to be able to be honest about these things. We have to stop trying to appeal to the entire crowd and just say our truth and let the chips fall where they will. So if I lose subscribers over this, I'm okay with that. If I gain subscribers, that's fine too. I just smudged my lipstick. That's okay. You know, but sometimes the truth has to be told. And that's what I'm here doing today. I'm just telling the truth as I see it. So love me, hate me, I don't care. This is my channel. These are my videos. If you don't like it, you don't have to subscribe. You certainly don't have to watch. Just keep scrolling, baby. So anyway, I hope you have a great day. I hope I feel better now that I've gotten some of this off my mind. I said what I needed to say. This weekend was spent primarily in bed because I just wasn't feeling good. Terrible headaches, nausea, so forth. And I'm hoping that this will help at least somewhat. We shall see. Anyway, have a great day. I hope you'll tune in again soon. I will make the next topic more enjoyable, more fun, more with a broader appeal to more people. But I had some things to say today that couldn't wait. So anyhow, take care of yourselves. Be good to yourself. Do something nice for yourself today. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.